Hello everybody! Humble here. I want to go off saying that I love Summer Camp Island. It has so much charm and almost all of the characters are written really well. Take note that I said almost everyone. There's one character that I just can't seem to like, and that's Susie. No matter how many times I try to not dislike her, I just see her as this huge jerk to Oscar and pretty much everyone in the camp. She's even mean to some of her own friends at times. But what better way to dive into her character as a whole than to look at my least favorite episode of Summer Camp Island. And that's Mr. Softball. And it just so happens that she's a main character in this episode. Before I begin, if you want to hear my thoughts on the series as a whole, I would suggest watching my review of it right here, because I am going to be pretty negative on this review. Anyways, let's dig in. The episode begins with Susie spinning the chore wheel to determine who is going to brush the killer whale's teeth, and it ends up landing on Susie. Of course, because she is pretty full of herself, she offers a small bet. She asks Oscar to a softball game. Loser cleans the whale's teeth.
You're out!
First of all, I don't understand why Oscar takes this offer up in the first place. If they win, Susie does the chore. But if they don't accept, she still has to do the chore. I understand that he wanted to play softball anyways, but he could have just not accepted the offer and then played softball like he normally was without Susie. Another thing I don't understand is why the other witches, Alice and Betsy, are on Susie's side. Susie even tried to throw them under the bus and make Alice move the wheel so she had to do the chore. I don't like how Susie can be mean to everyone and yet still be in control. I'm already rambling and we're not even through the beginning of this episode, so let's just move on. Hedgehog tries to convince Oscar to not take the deal, but he claims that they will win fairly, knowing full well that Susie is going to cheat. Susie convinces Oscar that there will only be 3 of them playing the game and will be at a disadvantage since Oscar would have a team of 9. The game starts, and the camp counselors are already trying to use magic to cheat, which originally I thought would be pretty cool, but it's not that very interesting or funny in the way that they cheat. I feel like they could have thrown some more stuff into the mix instead of just Susie clones herself. She freezes people, and she moves people to win. Because in other episodes, the show can be extremely creative in its topics. And the whole time, Susie just doesn't care. So why should I? And to add to that, Susie excuses her cloning herself by pulling out the softball rulebook. And it says that they need 9 people on a team to each play. And Oscar is just okay with this? Susie is already cheating clearly, so how does Oscar not call her out on this? Oscar should be the one calling the rulebook for some justice, not Susie. It aggravates me because Oscar is not this oblivious in other episodes. He says he doesn't care and that they will win fair and square, but this just throws that logic out the window, and Oscar should know this. So the campers continue to play fairly until Susie makes fun at Oscar in just an unfunny way and makes me feel terrible for Oscar trying to fight the good fight. She and the other counselors practically bully him until he snaps and decides to cheat as well. Typically, in cartoons, you are rooting for the protagonist to win, and this is a perfect example of this. But what really falls flat for me is the fact that in a battle between good and evil, the quote-unquote good guys stay the good guys and don't stoop down to the level of the bad guys. And throughout all of this, Susie is still mean to Oscar and just being a huge jerk. She's really annoying with her whole cheer routine and how terrible Oscar is, but not just to Oscar, and it makes me want to root for him. But when all of them stoop down to Susie's level, I get very confused, like, who should I root for now? And throughout this whole time, Oscar and his friends seem powerless against Susie and the other counselors. So while you are rooting for Oscar, it just makes me feel terrible for him. And nobody likes a battle between good and evil where the good can't do anything against evil. There are so many ways this could have been done better. Maybe Susie and the other counselors cheated so much that they got ahead of themselves and foil themselves. Or Susie would have fallen asleep and it could have been something of the matter like the tortoise and the hare story. In fact, she does fall asleep and almost forgets, but no, she just uses more magic. If Susie did indeed foil herself, that way Oscar would win fair and square without seeming powerless or irritating. I have to give this episode some credit, however. Once Oscar and the rest of the campers start cheating, the payback at the counselors is pretty nice. However, this doesn't last long because after about 30 seconds to a minute, everybody breaks out in a prank war style fight that reminds me of regular show's Prank War. I mean, the scene is good, but it's really Again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's just uninteresting and more stuff could have happened than just throwing fish and apples and yelling. The episode then ends when Oscar calls out to the killer whale we see in the beginning of the episode, and the whale calls out Susie for disobeying the chore wheel. But this ending just makes absolutely no sense. Oscar said that he knew the whale would have stopped Susie and had power over her when he calls the killer whale. So why didn't he call them in the first place? This ending makes the whole plot fall apart and it barely has a leg to stand on. It makes the whole softball game seem pointless at this point. If you rewatch the episode and know this ending, no matter what Oscar says, whether he loses, wins, or doesn't even accept the offer at all, the ending will stay the same. It just comes out of nowhere, and I feel like the writers ran out of time and needed to end it at the 11-minute mark, which is pretty uncommon in cartoons. Mostly I see episodes where the writers need to make that 11-minute mark and use filler to pan the runtime, but even that doesn't save this pretty terrible ending. I know this review has practically turned into a rant at this point, so I'll just say my overall thoughts here. Overall, this episode is definitely the worst of the 20 episodes that were released, and this episode is also why I really dislike Susie as a character. She's extremely mean to the campers, and Oscar just seems powerless against her. And it's very simply not fun seeing the antagonist win and the protagonist can't do anything about it. And the whole whale thing doesn't come until after the softball game and seems like a very cheap way to end a lackluster episode to begin with. This whole plot falls flat on its face, and combined with the episode not being funny or very creative, as the other 20 episodes are, I can't find anything else good about Mr. Softball. Anyways, that ends my review here. Thank you all for watching, and feel free to leave your thoughts on this episode in the comments below. And with that, I'll see y'all later.